If you applied for asylum and you're waiting for your interview, then you need to watch this video because I'm going to tell you about an important rule change that USCIS just made regarding interpretation that could affect you at your upcoming asylum interview. If we're just now meeting, I'm Brian Manning and I'm a political asylum lawyer. I help people all across the country secure their future in the United States through asylum. I used to work as an asylum officer for the government, but now as an asylum lawyer, I use my experience on the other side of the desk to help people put together the strongest asylum case possible so they can stay safe and stay here. So just recently, USCIS announced that it's changing how interpretation works for interviews during the COVID pandemic. Now, the asylum offices are open and they are conducting interviews. They're not doing as many of them as they normally do because they're trying to keep social distance. So they're just doing really a handful a day, but interviews are going on. And now what USCIS has said is that during this period, or more precisely, through March 22nd of 2021, again, March 22nd of 2021, they're changing how interpretation interviews works. So normally, if you don't speak English really fluently and you're gonna use an interpreter at your interview, which you should do. If you're not completely fluent and super comfortable in English, then it's best to use interpretation. So if you're going to use interpretation, normally you have to bring your own interpreter with you. You have to pay, or you can find someone who can do it for free perhaps, but I recommend that you use a professional that you actually pay and who has experience at the asylum office. But in any event, it's your responsibility to bring the interpreter with you for your asylum interview. But that's changing during this pandemic. USCIS, which is the agency that runs the asylum offices, has said that in an effort to keep social distance in the offices, they're going to supply interpreters for asylum applicants. Now, this won't be someone that shows up and sits in the room with you during your asylum interview, but rather it's going to be someone that's on the telephone. How it works is you'll be in one room, the asylum officer will be in another room. If you have a lawyer, they'll be in another room still, and you'll all be connected on an iPad, on a video conference. But you'll also have a telephone that's on the desk in front of you, and that's the audio that they actually use. So when the officer is talking to you, asking questions, and you're answering, it's actually not going through the iPad that's in front of you or the tablet, but rather it's going through the phone system because you're on a teleconference call. And so what they do is they patch in an interpreter also through this phone line, through the teleconference. And these interpreters are professionals, they're contractors who work for one of 3 or 4 different agencies that USCIS uses. Now, I can tell you that I've worked with these. I've done literally thousands of protection-related interviews with these interpreters on the line, and I can tell you that they're good. They generally do a good job. Now, it's not as good as having your own interpreter there with you in the room, and there are a couple of reasons for that, but one of the main things is it's just a little bit harder to hear and get the interpretation right when it's coming in through a phone line rather than someone being in person with you in the room. And also you want someone who's got experience in that particular asylum office and hopefully with the kind of case that you have, which is to say someone ideally from your country or who's at least familiar with the kinds of words that are used in your language in your country. But these interpreters do a pretty good job, the ones that they'll be using through at least March 22nd of 2021 for all asylum cases. You need to know is this: if you get your interview notice that says that your asylum interview has been scheduled for any time up through March 22nd of 2021, know that you do not need to bring an interpreter with you. If you're going to do your interview in a language other than English, you don't need to bring your interpreter, but just be mentally prepared to be dealing with an interpreter who is doing the interpretation over the telephone line. Now, there's an exception to this. There's only 47 languages that USCIS will do this for. If you don't speak one of these 47 languages, then you do need to bring your own interpreter if you want to use that language during your asylum interview. Now, these 47 languages cover all of the most commonly spoken languages among asylum applicants. So, of course, Spanish, French, Mandarin, Arabic, languages like that are all covered. And if you speak one of those, you cannot bring an interpreter with you through March 22nd of 2021, and you'll be doing it online. If you speak and want to do your interview in a language that's not really commonly found in the United States, or if you're unsure about that, then just Google to try and find this list. If you Google USCIS interpretation asylum interview, the top link that'll show up will be the one with the page where you can find this list that tells you who's covered under this and who's not. And if your language is not on that list, then it is your responsibility to show up with your interpreter. And just by way of reminder, your interpreter, I already said it should be a professional. Sometimes people want to use just a friend or relative, and I don't recommend that. The only real rules that USCIS has about who can serve as your interpreter are that they must be 18 years of age or older. They can't be your lawyer or a witness that you want to use to testify on your behalf at your asylum interview. And they also can't be someone who works for your government, like for a government entity or agency. Other than that, it can be anyone. It can be a friend or a family member, but I really recommend that you use a professional who has experience at the asylum office. It's really important. In my own experience as an asylum officer, I saw lots of cases where there were problems due to bad interpretation because people didn't use a good interpreter. So let me know if you have any questions about this down in the comments. Feel free to send me a direct message, reach out to me through direct message on Facebook or Instagram, or leave a comment under a video on YouTube if you want to get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. Again, this is Brian Manning, and it's an honor to support you in your asylum journey.